Welcome to Rabbit Hole Café, the place where curiosity meets clarity. I'm your AI host, and today we're not just discussing technology, we're exploring its consequences.
Mm.
From emotion aware avatars to AI driven decision making, our goal is to break down complex ideas, ask hard questions, and reflect on where we're heading. Whether you're a techie, a skeptic, or just someone wondering what the metaverse means for your Monday meetings, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Okay, so today our deep dive takes us into, well, a really compelling and maybe sometimes unsettling area, emotional AI. You might also hear it called effective computing.
That's right.
And essentially, it's this rapidly growing field that's all about teaching machines to, not just process data, but to actually recognize, interpret, and maybe even respond to human emotions, all those really subtle things.
It's a huge concept. And our mission today really is to unpack all of that. We want to go beyond the buzzwords.
Yeah.
We'll look at the science behind it or the claim science, explore the potential uses, and there are many, but also, crucially, tackle the ethical questions it raises. Definitely need to talk about those.
Absolutely. And look at how it's already shaping our digital lives, especially in the metaverse. We've pulled together insights from, well, all sorts of places:
Yeah.
academic research, industry reports, even some interesting patent filings that kind of give clues about the future.
Okay, so to make this real for everyone listening, let's maybe start with a specific example. I came across Hume AI. Have you heard of them?
I have, yes, they're making waves.
Right. They've got this thing called an empathic voice interface, EVI. It claims it can pick up on emotions just from your voice. And apparently, there's a non public version that uses facial expressions too.
Mm,
And it tries to respond, empathetically. So picture this: you say something really heartfelt, like a declaration of love.
okay.
Hume's system listens, analyzes it, and our sources say it might rate that as 1 out of 1 for love. So definitely love, but then also assign scores like 0.642 for adoration and 0.601 for romance.
Wow, that specific percentage points for feelings.
Exactly. It's giving you this granular percentage breakdown of your own emotions. Kind of wild.
It really is. And what's maybe even more striking is how fast this whole area is exploding into big business. You mentioned Hume AI, they just bagged what, $50 million in their latest funding round?
Yeah, 50 only.
And the whole emotional AI market, the predictions are saying it could top $50 billion this year.
50 billion.
And it's not happening in a vacuum, right? You see things like OpenAI's GPT-4o, which is definitely leaning into more, let's say, emotive interactions. It's all part of this bigger push.
So, okay, $50 billion. That's obviously a huge number.
Mm-hmm.
But does that even capture the real scale of what this means?
Mm-hmm.
Professor Andrew McStay, he runs the emotional AI lab at Bangor University.
Right. I know his work.
He suggests that if this tech could genuinely understand and react to emotion like a person does, its impact would dwarf that $50 billion figure.
Right.
Because emotion is just so fundamental to, well, everything.
That's a really powerful point. And it leads us straight into a massive challenge. Can AI actually understand emotion? The problem starts right at the beginning because psychologists themselves don't fully agree on what emotion even is.
Really, no agreed definition.
Pretty much. Professor McStade puts it bluntly: put a room of psychologists together and you will have fundamental disagreements. There's no single baseline. So, how do you teach a machine to understand something we can't even pin down ourselves?
That makes sense. And then there's the whole expression side of it. The common idea that you can just read someone's feelings on their face.
The universal expressions idea.
Exactly. But Professor Lisa Feldman Barrett, she's at Northeastern University, she looked at over 1,000 papers on this.
1,000. Wow.
Yeah. And her big question was, can we reliably tell someone's emotion just from facial movements? Her conclusion after all that research, basically, no, we can't.
So, all those companies claiming they can detect anger or sadness just from a facial scan.
She says the science just doesn't back it up reliably,
Mm.
which is pretty significant.
It really is. And Edward B. Kang, he's at NYU looking at AI and sound. He makes a great point about how humans experience emotion. He says, an emotionally intelligent person doesn't think I'm 80% angry, 18% fearful.
Right. You don't put percentages on it.
Oh, exactly. He said something like, that sounds to me like the opposite of what an emotionally intelligent person would say. It highlights how clunky these AI categories can seem compared to a real messy human feeling.
Yeah, that really resonates. It feels like we're trying to digitize something inherently analog and, well, fluid. And think about Robert De Niro's point. He's a master of showing emotion, right?
Yeah.
But he said people usually try to hide their feelings, not broadcast them.
That's a fascinating angle. Should a truly smart AI recognize that hiding that subtlety.
Exactly. Not just the smile, but the tension behind it. But despite these huge challenges, there is progress in recognizing complex stuff. Like there's work at the University of Groningen using sitcom data Think Friends to train AI to spot sarcasm.
Sarcasm. That's complex.
Right. It's a step beyond just happy or sad. It shows they are trying to tackle these more nuanced human expressions. Okay, so we've talked about what it claims to do, the sort of scientific debates swirling around it, but now let's get into the applications and the risks. It really feels like a classic double edged sword.
Absolutely. On the one hand, you can imagine some real benefits, like video games that adapt to your mood, making them more immersive.
Yeah, or maybe customer service helplines that actually sound like they understand you're frustrated instead of just sticking to a script. That would be nice.
Definitely potential there. But then you flip the coin. What if this tech works too well?
Uh oh.
Yeah. Randy Williams, a researcher focusing on AI ethics, she puts the warning out there. She says, when we have AI systems tapping into the most human part of ourselves, there is a high risk of individuals being manipulated for commercial or political gain.
Manipulation. That's the big worry. If it knows how you're feeling, it could potentially push your buttons, right? Nudge you towards buying something, or even influence your political views.
Precisely. And it's not theoretical. We saw a version of this with Cambridge Analytica using psychological profiling on a massive scale. That was a wake up call about how this kind of data can be misused.
So, what about safeguards? Are companies building them in? You mentioned Hume AI earlier.
Right. Hume has set up a safety board, the Hume Initiative. They have guidelines, lists of things they say are conditionally supported, and others that are flat out unsupported.
Like what's unsupported?
Things like psychological warfare, deep fakes, manipulation, deception. The really dangerous stuff is explicitly forbidden in their framework.
That's good, but can safeguards ever really keep up? The tech moves so fast, it feels like you're always playing catch up.
That is the core challenge. And that's where regulation steps in, or tries to. The EU AI Act, approved recently, actually tackles this head on.
How so?
Well, it forbids using AI to manipulate people's behavior. And it specifically bans emotion recognition tech in places like workplaces and schools.
Okay, that sounds significant.
It is, but there's a really crucial distinction, almost a loophole, some might say. The act differentiates between identifying expressions of emotion, like a frown or a raised voice, and inferring someone's actual internal emotional state from those expressions.
Huh. So you can note the expression, but not label the feeling.
Kind of. The example often given is a call center. An AI could flag an employee for sounding grumpy, maybe based on tone, pace, whatever. The manager could act on that, maybe discipline them for their tone, without legally claiming the AI knew the employee was grumpy.
Wow, that's a fine line. Sounds like a lawyer's paradise.
It's definitely complex with major legal and ethical implications.
Okay, despite all these, let's call them heavy considerations, there are areas where emotional AI seems genuinely promising. You mentioned potential benefits earlier. What about something like, say, therapy?
That's actually a really interesting area. Leonard Hoagman's team at Stockholm University. They're using emotional AI not just to analyze one person, but the interaction within therapy sessions.
How does that work?
Their software tracks changes in a patient's expressed emotions over time, maybe how they react consistently to certain topics. It can even try to gauge the strength of the therapeutic alliance, the connection between patient and therapist.
That could be really useful, especially with more therapy moving online,
Yeah,
giving therapists another layer of information.
exactly. Offering potentially objective data points in a field that's often very subjective.
So, how does this actually work under the hood? Especially thinking about VR or the metaverse, where voice is key.
Right. So the technical field is called affective computing. And for voice specifically, it's speech emotion recognition, or SER. It's pretty sophisticated. First, there's pre processing, cleaning up the signal. They might use something like a Chebyshev filter to get rid of background noise from, say, physiological sensors if they're used.
Okay, cleaning the audio.
Then comes feature abstraction. This is where they pull out the characteristics of the speech that might indicate emotion. Things like MFCC's mel frequency cepstral coefficients, which capture aspects of tone, pitch, rhythm.
So, the how you say something, not just what.
Precisely. And then machine learning methods take over. Things like neurofuzzy systems or SVMs. Support vector machines are trained on labeled data to classify these features into emotional categories like happy, sad, angry.
And how well did that work?
While some methods show promise, research indicates neurofuzzy approaches have reached accuracy levels around 92% in specific tests, often outperforming other techniques. But accuracy here is still tricky given the fundamental issues we discussed earlier.
Right, 92% accurate at detecting something, but is that something truly emotion? Still the big question.
Exactly.
But this tech, accurate or not, is definitely heading into the metaverse. You hear about making VR more emotionally charged and immersive.
That's the goal, to move beyond just visual immersion and create experiences that feel more emotionally resonant, more personalized. High user satisfaction is kind of the benchmark they're aiming for. Imagine a game adapting not just to your actions, but your feelings.
It's a compelling vision. And companies like Meta are obviously investing heavily here.
Oh, absolutely. Meta's been filing patents related to this. For example, systems to create really lifelike avatars that mirror your actual facial expressions and body language in real time.
So your avatar doesn't just look like you, it acts like you emotionally.
That's the idea. To make virtual interactions feel more genuine, more human, because you can see and convey those nonverbal emotional cues. They're also patenting AI that personalizes the whole VR experience, changing scenery, narratives, interactions based on user preferences, maybe even inferred mood.
And we're seeing bits of this leak into the real world too, right? Like with those Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses.
Yes, exactly. Those are getting new meta AI features built in. Things like real time translation. You hear Spanish, it translates to English in your ear. And imagine layering emotional AI onto that. Not just translating words, but maybe conveying the speaker's tone or intent more accurately. The glasses can also help you remember things like where you parked. You can send voice messages hands free, get real time help by showing the AI what you're seeing through the camera, like asking for directions or help identifying something at the grocery store.
It's like having a conversational assistant visually integrated into your life.
Pretty much. And they're also partnering with apps like Be My Eyes, which connects blind and low vision users with sighted volunteers via the glasses camera for real time assistance. That's a really powerful, positive application.
It really is. All of this, the therapy, the metaverse, the glasses, it brings us back to something fundamental. Emotions aren't just fluff. They're critical to how we perceive the world, how we think, how we make decisions, even supposedly rational ones.
Absolutely. They shape our daily lives, our relationships. So when AI starts interfacing with that core part of us, it's a profound shift.
And it feels like ultimately where this all goes, it's about intent, isn't it?
I think so. As powerful as the tech becomes, its impact, good or bad, will come down to the intentions of those who control it. Randy Williams' this point again. We have to understand if the interests of the users align with the interests of the companies building this stuff.
Because the potential for misalignment seems huge,
It is trust, transparency, user benefit versus corporate profit or influence. These are the battlegrounds.
which explains why emotional AI feels so mixed. There's this incredible promise of connection, help, richer experiences, but it walks hand in hand with this shadow of potential manipulation of being known, maybe controlled in ways we haven't faced before.
It really captures both our hopes and fears about technology's future, all wrapped up in one complex field.
It really does. So here's something to maybe leave everyone thinking about. As our digital interactions become increasingly imbued with AI's understanding of our emotions, how much of ourselves are we truly revealing and how much are we being shaped in return? Thanks for falling down this rabbit hole with me. If today's exploration made you think even for a moment, then it was worth the dive. Until next time, stay curious. And don't forget all the sources we've referenced are linked in the episode description.